Okay, so I think we're good to go here. First, I'd like to say hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us here at the Portal Connector for our 6.0 release webinar. My name is Steve Webb. I am VP of Product Development here at the Portal Connector. And today I'll be taking you through 5 of the great new features of Release 6.0 and how they can help your customers. As we're going through the webinar, if you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the Q&A area. My team will respond to these as they come in. And oh, sorry about that, my dogs. And I'll address some of the questions at the end of the webinar. So let's get started. Okay, with more and more customers moving to Dynamics 365 Online, one of the challenges that some are facing are the API limitations for integrations. Whether it is a Power Apps portal, a custom developed portal, or even the portal connector, we all have to abide by these restrictions. In 6.0, we have continued to provide flexibility in managing API calls to Dynamics. And in this release, we have introduced data caching on a widget by widget, query by query basis. It's very important that organizations have the ability to display real-time data to their customers. So we're keeping it real, you could say, but we also understand that some data doesn't have to be presented in real time. Let me show you how this works. Okay, so here we have the administrative area for the portal connector. And as I said, it is on a widget by widget basis. So inside of pages, what that means is that basically any widget that uses data, so I'm going to jump into the dashboard here, that uses data can be now configured to be cached. So if you look at, for instance, on here we have open cases, closed cases, follow-up, but we also have list views here. So list views, grids, charts, anything that uses a set of data, it can have that configured. So I'm going to jump into this list view here and click on edit. It's also important to note that it's not, so you can see the data set here, the fetch statement. It's not caching the entire data set for instance, cases or incidents. It's on a query by query basis. So what that means is that we're only actually caching the information that we need. So you don't have to worry about, gigabytes and gigabytes of memory being used just to cache a few small queries. We're not taking the whole data set from the entity. It's on a query by query basis. So to enable this, like any of our feature releases, what we do is we try to limit the changes that we have on a widget by widget basis to prevent breaking changes. So right now, to enable it, you have to actually go into the advanced settings under model, and you'll see data cache. And right now it's actually set to true. By default, it's set to false. But if you want to cache the query that's driving this list view, you just change this to true, save the settings, and now that's configured to be cached. So as I said, it works with all of our data widgets. So, grids, list views, charts, so on and so on. So it's not just on a page by page basis, for those page widgets, but it's also on forms. So if I go into my forms section, we do have some data widgets on our forms. So I'm going to open up this company profile form here. And if I look at this here, what we have is, a field down here, a lookup field, a primary contact field. Inside there, of course, we could have, right now it's actually set to read only, but if it wasn't set to read only, we would have a query for this. So even on lookups on forms, if you go into the advanced section, models, you can change that to cache the data that is populating this lookup field. So it's pretty important because what that means is that it's not going to Dynamics every time it needs data. It's actually just hitting the cache. So as I said, it's the first iteration of that functionality. So we do have plans on extending it in the future, but right now, the settings on whether it is invalidated, at an absolute amount of time or whether it's a sliding cache, those settings are set globally inside the settings section under advanced. And then if I scroll down here to the portal connector, there it is there, open that up. You'll see that we have that new settings section called cache. And in there, I can change it to an absolute value or a sliding value and then specify the information or the settings for that the specific caching. And you can also manage the memory limits and so on and so on to make sure that it's optimized for your hosting environment. So in the future, we are planning on moving those settings to on a widget by widget basis, and that settings section would be the default configuration for all widgets that can be overwritten by the settings inside of the widgets. But it's important to have that type of flexibility because, and where you would use that is not necessarily with live data, like field service data or anything along those lines, but maybe it's notifications or news and events. Events don't change that frequently. It's more than acceptable to have a list of events that are displayed on the screen, populated from dynamics that only update every 12 hours or something along those lines. And that would save a tremendous number of API requests back to dynamics. So let's jump back into my PowerPoint here. Okay, so just to reiterate, the data caching, great feature, and it is something that we're going to be enhancing as we go. The next feature is actually something that folks have been requesting for quite some time now, and that's the Power BI filtering. So back in TPC 5.0, we introduced our Power BI integration. At the time, I'll be honest, it wasn't the slickest thing around, as the integration libraries were kind of clunky still and limited in functionality. One of those limitations was server-side filtering of the data. Since then, Microsoft has released a new version of their Power BI API, which has a much broader feature set. In 6.0, we have moved the Power BI widget to the new API, which means a few things. First, we have built-in filtering of the underlying data sets of the reports on the server side, so the data is secure. What this means is now a report, dashboard, or tile can be filtered specifically for logged in users, their parent accounts, or other variables that are set in the system. It also means that it is a small breaking change that will require you to use Microsoft's Power BI embedded with an Azure capacity plan now. If you're using the embed web report functionality, this will not change, and it will still function after upgrade. But let me show you what we have here and what it looks like, and also where you can find some documentation on how to get that all set up with a Azure capacity plan. Okay, so I have a report here. So I'm just going to bring it up really quick here. So there it is there. It's on one of my pages. I'm going to show you what that looks like first, and then I'll show you how that filtering actually works. So it's just loading up my Power BI. There it is. Okay. And you can see here that it's just one of the sample reports that that Power BI has. Right now we have it with North, East, South, Central, all the other good information, and of course all the executives and all the information that you would expect from this typical report. But now if I wanted to, what I'm going to do is actually take the easy one here. I'm going to take this region here, and I'm going to show only the East region. Okay. So to do that, I'm going to go back into my pages here, And again, it is something that is pretty flexible, and you can use variables for it. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually hard code one of those in there. So you can see that we have our app report, my demo environment, and the customer profitability sample. But now we have this filters tab here. So I'm going to jump over there, and I'm going to add a new filter. So I'm going to filter this by region. And I'm going to select my my table. It's the table in my data set is actually called states. And then I'm going to select my field. So the column inside that data set is region. Okay. And then I'm going to say when it's in, and I'm going to make this a static value, but you can see here I can set it with a session variable, query string, the logged in contact ID, parent customer, all of the same filters that we have for any of our other data widgets. So I'm going to keep that static, and I'm just going to go east. Okay, let's add that there, and there's our new filter. I'm going to click on save. Let's publish this. And let's go into here and refresh this. So now what happened is, what I'm doing is I'm actually filtering the data set on the server side. So none of that other data from the north, south, central, or other locations is going to be returned. It's just going to be the east. There's the east, which is great. In the past, all we had the capability of doing was filtering that data on the client side, which caused a little bit of a problem, because if you wanted a report that was specific to the logged in user or the logged in user's account, then all of that data was still coming down into that report. And of course, because it's on the web, someone could easily get access to that data. But now none of that data is being pulled down, and you can use it just like any of the other TPC data widgets. So as I said, you do need an Azure capacity plan for this, because you have to use Azure embedded, or Power BI embedded. So to find the documentation for that, it's actually at this address here. So I'm just going to leave that up there for a second, and you can refer back to it if you want to review this webinar. Okay, and inside there, you'll notice here that we have 5.3 and older, and we have 6.0, has some prerequisites, and all of the instructions on exactly what you need to do to configure that inside of Azure, as well as in the portal connector. Okay. All right, so let me flip back to my PowerPoint, and we'll take a look at the next feature. Okay, so our next feature is audit reports. So the audit module was released, I guess, a couple versions back now, and it allows you to configure specific user actions to leave an audit trail to report on. In the initial release, the only reporting that was available was an Excel export. Not ideal, but it had the data that was required to be analyzed. In this release, we have introduced a report area for the audit module. I guess this initial release, we have 2 built-in reports, with plans on releasing more this year. With each of the releases we have this year, we'll be releasing more reports. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Okay, so I'm going to actually just shut down my Power BI stuff here. So the audit module reports you'll find them under administration, and then you'll see the auditing, and then audit reports. So actually, I'm going to just jump to the auditing section really quick here. So if folks aren't familiar with it, they can see how it's configured. So basically, what you want to do is you just want to enable auditing, and you can see that we have backend auditing. So you can audit when a backend user logs in or creates content, or updates or creates users. But we also have the ability to audit front-end actions as well, logging in, logging out, login attempts, navigating the pages. submitting forms, creating and updating records, all the good stuff. Site vanity, so searching the website, and also knowledge-based searches. So once you have that configured and it's turned on, it will automatically start gathering that data. And you can see here that there's our export to Excel. So what we released this version is the audit reporting. And right now, the reports that we have is mainly centered around logging in and login attempts. So it's just loading the first report here. And you can see that there's our, right now it's actually just for today. It just has myself logging in here. If I go in, I can do it by date. This is by user. So I can specify a specific user that I want to look at here. And of course I can change the date range. So if I want to do it by date range, then it's just going to show me all the users, and you can see my 2 logins there. But if I go back a few days, maybe I'll go back to here. There should be quite a few more records there, and it just shows all of the different logins that happened or occurred during that time period. So as I said, our goal here, and it's also printable, so it's a very nice printing experience. It's paged, it has all the typical stuff that you would see in a audit report or a report area. And again, I can filter that based on the logged in user as well. So that is that's the auditing reports. Our hope is that this year we will have a very good selection of canned reports, but then also open up this area to allow administrators to create their own reports as well. So be able to drag and drop fields on and create their own printable reports for auditing purposes. Okay, so let's go back to PowerPoint and move along. Okay. So the next feature we have is our form flow navigation. So form flow has become one of the most popular features. It allows you to create a connected flow of forms, workflows, actions, and emails with conditional branching based on user input. This is great functionality for complex application processes or anything that has any type of workflow to it. In 6.0, we've added the ability to have a customizable navigation and progress bar to make it easier for users to move throughout the form flow process. Continue the process if they leave and come back, or simply just provide a status of where they are in the process. So let's take a look at that. Let's bring that up. There we go. Okay. So I guess the first thing I'll do is I will jump into my editing page here. So here's my form flow page that I prepared for this. And inside there, you'll see that I already have a flow, a very basic flow defined. So I'm going to actually edit this. And right away, you'll notice that we have this navigation tab. So the navigation is actually 2 parts. There's navigation on individual steps, as well as the navigation in general. So right now I'm saying show the navigation. I want it to be horizontal. Allow them to actually click on the navigation links to navigate from step to step to step, whether it's linear or not. So are they allowed to jump over steps, or do they have to actually follow that path? And then of course, I can use different tracking capabilities to track navigation path, show indicators, show labels, and then show the end page as well. So let's go into the actual flow itself, and I'll show you some of those settings in there. So inside there, like I said, it's pretty straightforward. There's no branching, but we have a contact, company, financials, and then complete. So each of these steps, you now have some navigational elements here. So what icon to show? So we have users for this one. We have a lock for this one. So you can define those little icons. You don't have to use icons. You can use, you can notice here that the data can be cached here from one of those previous features. You can even cache the form flow data, which is pretty awesome. But you can specify what type of icons to use for that. So I'm going to actually close out of this, and I'm going to bring up the page now. So we can see what that looks like on the front end. Okay, so you can see here, I don't have the labels on, but you can see we have this navigation with the user, the lock, and you have various different icons you can choose from. And then finally at the end here, we have step 5, where it ends. And of course, I said that they can navigate, so it's going to take you back and forth between these various steps and track it inside of the URL here, so you can direct them back to different nodes as they're moving along. So that's the example of the horizontal navigation. Let me go back there and just change that to the vertical navigation and maybe add some labels to it. So it's pretty simple. Just go in navigation, vertical, and I'm going to say show labels. Click on save, publish this, and then refresh this page. And now what you'll notice is the navigations are actually going to drop down to the side here on the vertical side. And we also have those labels. So it creates a very clean navigational element to it. It's a pretty great little feature for form flow, as this is picking up more and more steam as the features get added to it. Okay, and finally, the most significant feature that we have in 6.0, which is something that I am like super stoked for, and that is something that will allow you folks to deliver new features to your customers faster and more flexibly, and that's our Power Platform connector. So the primary focus here was to provide a Power Automate connector functionality, and the team here really delivered. The new feature allows you to perform numerous actions and start flows based on various triggers from user actions within the portal connector. This functionality is a paid add-on to the portal connector. However, it's the portal connector's policy that all current customers with up-to-date maintenance receive any new modules that are released free of charge. So all you'll need to do is just download a new license key. Of course, they will need to be on TPC 6.0, but it's well worth the upgrade to 6.0. So let's take a look to see what that looks like. Okay. So the first element that we're looking at is actually to configure it. So on the pages side, on the administrative side, what you want to do is go into your modules and services. And once it's licensed, so once you update your license key, you can go down here to the portal connector and you'll see the portal connector Power Platform. And all you have to do is click on actions to activate that. And what that will do is it will add a new menu item in here called Power Platform. So going into that Power Platform, this is where you would configure an API key. So you can see I've already generated various API keys based on some of the demos I have, but you simply just click on create and it'll create a new API key. Make sure you copy the key because you won't be able to get a hold of it again. It's much like any other API keys or secrets. It only shows it once and then it's gone and you have to create a new one. Okay, so from here, what you can do is go into your Power Automate environment. Okay, so we'll go to flow Microsoft.com. There we go. So if I look at connectors, now the reason it's a Power Platform connector, because you can use it with Power Apps, Logic apps, but really, most people actually are focusing on Power Automate, obviously, which makes things a lot simpler. I'm just going to bring up the connector really quick here. So if I type in portal, we do have a different name for it, TPC portal, and the reason for that is apparently. It is a premium connector, but apparently Microsoft will not allow you to have the word connector inside of your Power Automate connector's name. So we had to actually change it to TPC portal instead of the portal connector, which kind of makes sense. So going into there, you can see some of the triggers that we have. So you can execute on anytime someone creates a comment, deletes content, logs in, a portal user is deleted. You can see there's various different triggers here, logouts, users updated, roles created, roles unassigned. So everything from security management to page navigations to content creation. And those are the triggers that you have to work with. So there's quite a few triggers there. I don't think that you'll be lacking at all for trying to figure out how you can execute one of those triggers. So if I go in there, let me just actually create a new flow. So let's go new, and I'm just an automate cloud flow. I'm going to skip over this. Actually, you know what? Maybe we'll give it a name. Demo. That's a pretty unique name. And I'm going to actually take a trigger right away. So I'm going to find my portal. And I'm going to say, you know what, when a user logs in, log in for the portal connector. And I'm going to click on create. So now this environment's already pre-configured to point to my demo site. So you can see under my connections here, I have my demo.portal trial, whatever. So if I wanted to add a new connection, this is where you need that API key. So I have the connection name, the URL of your portal. So it does have to be a publicly facing portal. And then of course your API key that you copied from the portal connector administrator area. So I'm going to actually click on cancel here, use my pre-built one. I'm going to select I can have the option of selecting a user. So whenever one of these users logs in, or I can say when any user logs in, and then also have the login result, whether it's successful, whether it is, if they hit one of the errors, for user limit reached or not found or something along those lines. But I'm going to leave it default. From there, I can add a new step, and I'm going to, again, bring up the portal elements, and let's bring up this the TPC portal, so you can see some of the actions that can be performed. So you can assign roles, create content, delete content, edit content, get all the content, lock out a user, publish content, sync your metadata if you wanted to, unlock users. So you have all of that type of functionality, which is pretty cool. Lots of functionality there. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually just do a really simple example of a flow. I'm going to say when someone logs in, I'm going to actually send an email. Not that that would be something that you'd want to do, but just in case. So I'm going to send an email here. And what I can do is I'm going to actually send this to myself. So bring this up here, this one here. And I'm going to say a subject. I can take my information from the previous step, of course. So I can go down here and I can say maybe the first name. Oh, let's get rid of that. Just logged in. Okay, and this is just demo body content. Okay, so I'm going to click on save here. Okay, so now I'm going to just pop back out of this, and you can see it's ready to go. Got it. Awesome. And it's pretty much good to run now. So what I'm going to do now is actually just open up another screen here. Or actually, you know what I'll do is I will log out of here. And I'm going to log back in again. Maybe I'll log in with an end user here. Oh no, I don't have the credentials for that. Let's go. Administrative area. And I'm going to log in with my support user. Log in. And what that's going to do, it's going to execute that flow. So there's my executed flow, and then I'm going to get that email. Let me see if I can bring that up really quick. Okay. And there is my email. So Portal just logged in. Actually, even attached my signature to it, which is pretty awesome because I sent it from my own account. But that's just you know, a quick demonstration of that functionality. So it is the same experience that you would expect from any of those premium connectors for Power Automate. Okay, so let's hop back out. Okay, so that's it. So thank you for joining us today to check out some of the new features. I hope that you see a lot of value in the 6.0 release, and hopefully we see a lot of folks upgrading to it. I know that the Power Automate connector is, or the Power Platform connector is definitely has a lot of value. Yeah. So we do have a little bit more time left here. So if there's any questions, we can take them now. Okay, so we got a few questions here. Okay, so let me start from the beginning. So the first question is, can you connect certain URLs to form submissions? Use case is email campaign with action to fill in form, and then track if the form was submitted. So there's a few different ways you can do that. So you could, I'm assuming that this is probably back a few features ago from the webinar, but what you could do is use the query string field widget, which will be able to submit that back to Dynamics. So you pass in that campaign code through the query string widget on the form, and it would populate a selected field on that form. So that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it would be, of course, to use the Power Automate connector. You could capture that form submission and populate data based on that as well back into your Dynamics. So there's a couple of flexible elements there. So you could do that. The next question, if some of the fields have lookups to CRM, does it retain the information if you go back and forth between different steps? Does it cache the information? If they change their mind and pick a different value for the field, does it update cache? Does it allow you to program business rules? Okay, so a lot of different questions there. That looks like it's related to form flow. So form flow, it does, so what it does between steps, it actually submits that data to Dynamics, and Dynamics stores that data. It would pass the newly created or the modified records or the editable records back and forth between those steps. In this particular demo, I didn't actually create any records, but it would maintain those steps back and forth between those steps. If they change their mind and pick a different value, does it update the record? It does update the record, so it wouldn't be cached. If If it was cached, it would update the cache as well. So that the cache setting inside of form flow, what that would do is it would store the record information from step to step in cache. So if you're going back and forth, it's not querying dynamics for that information. So if they selected a different value, it would update dynamics and then also update the cache. Does it allow you to program business rules? So form flow does there is a business rule element to forms. So it does have that capability for basic business rules, but you could also put branching inside of form flow. So you can say, well, if a user enters this, show this form, or if a user selects this, show that form, so on and so on. So you do have some of that capability. Another question, what version of Sitefinity can this be used on? So I'm assuming that we're talking about the 6.0 release. So we support, for 6.0, we support version 12.2 to 13.2. So it's important to note that, we recommend that folks keep their Sitefinity up to date, not as frequently as the portal connector. So I personally recommend that once a year you update to the newest version of Sitefinity, where the portal connector you can update on a version by version basis, just because there's a little bit more work to upgrade Sitefinity. On the portal connector side, it's just a matter of taking those DLLs and putting it in your bin folder to upgrade. So you do need to be on 12.2 to 13.2 to use 6.0. How do we start using the Power Automate connector? Well, first, you need to be on TPC 6.0. So as I said, everyone is grandfathered in for the Power Automate connector. So once you upgrade to TPC 6.0, apply your new license key, then you can enable that module, generate a API key, and then go into your environment and start creating flows or Power Apps or whichever you want to use the Power Automate connector for. What are you planning for 6.1? So usually we don't let people in on the plans this early. However, there is one element that I can speak to, and that is we do have our grid functionality in the portal connector, and what we're doing is we're adding a fairly significant amount of features to that grid. So some of those features would be able to save the state so users can customize their grid themselves, and then it will save their customization. So when they go back to the page, it will have their filtering, their columns that they want to display showing, and it'll do that automatically. And also, I guess the biggest feature that we're planning for that grid, of course, would be to make it fully editable. So a fully editable grid where you wouldn't have to dive into records. You can modify the data right there in the grid for multiple records, and then click save, and it'll update all of those records in one shot. So some pretty big features there for 6.1 just on the grid side of things. And then, of course, there's a few other things I did mention that we'll likely roll out more reports for the auditing module as well. So that's the questions. If there's any other questions, we can go for a couple more minutes here. I'll give folks another 30 seconds to a minute to ask any other questions, and then we can wrap this up. All right, so there's a new question here. Have you increased the maximum number of records that can be in an MVC grid? So the maximum number of records currently in an MVC grid, if you want to display all of the records all at once in an MVC grid, it's 5,000. And that's not a limitation on the portal connector side, that's a limitation on the dynamics side. Now, what you could do, however, is use paging for a grid. And if you page that data, you can display as many records as you want in that grid. Just keep in mind that every time you switch from page to page, it's making a small query back to Dynamics to get that data. So there is no limitation on the grid if it's actually paged. Okay, so let's give it any more questions there. Give a couple more seconds here. And actually, when we're talking about that grid and the number of records, as I said, that's always been a limitation of Dynamics, where they would only return 5,000 records in one query. But that is something that we can do the paging for. But that also includes lookups as well. So lookups have a limitation of only being able to display 5,000 records as well. In my opinion, just for performance purposes, you wouldn't want to display 5,000 records on a page all at once to begin with, just because that is a tremendous amount of data that users would have to download. And unfortunately, there are some folks that don't have broadband. I am one of those people. So it's always a challenge for me to work from home, especially over the last year or so. And as a matter of fact, right now, I'm currently using my cell phone to connect to the internet. So yes. Okay, so I think that's all the questions. We'll just give it another 30 seconds and then we'll end it. But in the meantime, if as I'm waiting here for any other questions to come through, thank you for attending. It's hopefully you see a lot of value in the 6.0 release. As I said, upgrade, keep it upgraded, and it's a lot easier to stay current from that point. Okay, so there's no other questions. Thank you once again. Looking forward to our next opportunity to show off some of the great new features of the Portal Connector. Take care.